Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Haas Talks FOSS. Today, I'm here with Daniel Black from the MariaDB Foundation, the Chief Innovation Officer for the MariaDB Foundation. How are you, Daniel?
Good, thanks, Matt. Waking up, got my coffee. Welcome to Canberra winter.
Yeah, and it's really early there, right? So what time is it?
Only 7:30 a.m. So
At 7:30. Okay, so the sun is just peeking up.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Okay. And are you on your roof? Is that what I see you on?
My hammock.
Your
It's
hammock.
my standard outdoors thing. I try to actually do presentations outdoors, as you've probably seen in some of them. Just to add a bit of variety, and this is my casual backyard look.
Yes. So you had spoken recently at Percona Live, but you've been speaking at conferences for quite some time. I think this is probably your sixth or seventh Percona Live that you've spoken at.
Probably, yes.
Yeah, you've done quite a bit, and typically you tend to really go deep into those nether regions of the bugs, the code. You find those hidden problems and like to expose them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a fascination I got far too much when I was employed as a DBA, and sort of ended up looking far too much code and getting to the end of the day. It's like, oh, I can't build the client this, but it was fun anyway. But yeah, I'm glad I got a job where I can actually do both now. Well,
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you did quite a bit of work at IBM as well before the MariaDB Foundation, right?
that's right. I was there for 4 years.
Okay.
So
And that was a lot on the Power Platform. So kind of making MySQL work on the Power
MySQL
Platform.
and MariaDB on Power. So it was just a lot of it was generic. It was just making use of all of a sudden, you got 256 virtual CPUs, and once you get to that level, you start to see problems that you don't kind of see on 8-core laptops and and other kind of development environments. So it was good to get out and just performance test things and find little bugs, and a lot of them actually got in as like generic improvements. So they helped all platforms, which is really good when you're trying to actually sell a fix that people go, power what? But it certainly helped Power, and it certainly helped everyone else as well.
Now, I'm sure that going through all of those, the code and trying to optimize on a large scale machine like that, you probably run into some things that you're like, oh my God, I don't believe that this actually did this.
Yeah, and or who wrote this, or what is this bit of code? So yes, there is a bit of that. But
Yeah.
it's a code base with a 20+ year heritage. There are some bits that got in, and people just haven't got a need to look at again, and you look at it again, it's going, there's a system call that does this, or glibc does a memory copy. Okay, there's no need to actually implement your own. There's a bunch of like custom mutexes. I was like, okay, they may have been needed one stage, but in some ways there's this, they're part of standards now, so we can move on.
And that's one of the weird things that with software as old as MySQL, and even Maria now has some age on it because it's been around for a while now. The machines and the hardware and the kernels changed drastically over that time period. I mean, the original MySQL was written when single core machines were mainstream, and you had 128 megs or 256 megs of memory on your big boxes, right?
Yeah.
My favorite, I've mentioned this before, my favorite, line of code in all of InnoDB was when Heki, hard coded 100 IOs per second. And the comment was,
that's right.
Yeah. This is all modern disk will ever do. So, I mean, hey, there's a lot of those issues that kind of lurk there. So
saw Marco actually, exasperating in another Henky comment, the other day. It's like,
oh,
oh
did you?
dear, oh dear. Why is this
Which was
still
it?
there?
Do,
Oh, it was something like this is, a hardware bug or something else or something else. It's like you're just guessing and you're putting this in an error log message, aren't we? Come on, let's
yeah.
get back.
So when you're going through and trying to modernize, I mean, that's a tough process because there's the mentality of sometimes when it's not broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, you know, there is quite age on a lot of stuff there. So as you approach these, is it more of as the problems crop up, that's when you start to like look at those kind of nether regions of the code, or do you just, like go on vacation and print out the source code and just look at it like a nice book?
Yeah, roll around it in the beach. Not quite. I mean, sometimes it's going through and grabbing a perf file and looking through, and other times it's like I'm looking at a performance problem elsewhere, and it's like, there's this bit as well. It's like, what's that meant to be doing? I mean, another one I haven't got to ages ago is there's a randomization function. Is like, this is using a bunch of constants. It's got some global lock on a variable because statement-based replication, and we've got to support that. But really, it's like get a random number. It shouldn't have a concurrency problem. So
Yeah.
haven't tackled that one, but yeah, there's certainly those kind of things. There's also a lot of code base that's like, okay, we're going to pack this down, byte by byte, right beside each other. It's like, well, modern CPUs, and so part of my time at IBM, sort of aware that that's not always the best way. So yeah, there's a bit of just coming across things and applying a bit of experience and applying a bit of perf knowledge and seeing what can be done.
Yeah. So in your toolbox today, I mean, the tools have evolved as well. What are your favorite kind of tools that you use to debug and find some of these issues? Like what are you using nowadays?
I'm still using fairly old school, like you see makes your GDBs and that kind of thing to get through it. On the performance stuff, I guess perf has been around for a while, but it as a sampling, it still does a pretty good job on things. As we're going through and doing kind of benchmarking, sometimes like BPF trace, just to get that kind of timing between different points of IO speed. And it's like, what exactly is going on, between things to get measurements that between points on latencies and that kind of thing, that sort of sometimes perf doesn't show up as well. That you need more like off CPU analysis, and there's your flame graphs and stuff as you need to try to communicate
Yeah.
how horrible some things really are.
Oh yeah. No, I got that. I got that. So, so you still do spend some time in your current role doing that debugging, right? And
Oh
performance
yeah,
tuning.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably not as much as I was before, but certainly these user bugs come in, and every now and then it's good to just go through and work through the interaction with the customer and or not customer, foundation. So yeah, just general community user, and see what they're going through, try to get the right information out of them, and trying to go through and sometimes it's, oh geez, yep, you're right, that's easily fixable. um, just before
Okay.
10.1 end of life late last year, it was like looking, it's like if you kill off a MariaDB process under some conditions, you weren't actually getting an error message, an error response in the SQL layer. It's like, yep, okay, quick last little fix into 10.1 release. But so yeah, there's a and that was while looking at another bug. So yeah,
So
there's
what are you
always an
spending your
opportunity
time then
to.
on? Like, so you're doing that a little bit. It's kind of backed off a bit. So as the chief innovation officer, what kind of things are you working on nowadays?
I was doing a bit on system D socket activation, which was a little bit that I started years and years ago when this was in my days. It was, oh dear, I'm running out of money. But geez, this is fun writing it. So this is about when I actually added the system D support into MariaDB. This socket activation was additional add-on, and what that means is that systemd can listen to the socket, and when it gets a connection, it can spin up the instance of MariaDB. So not a total everyday use case, but if you're doing say a MariaDB instance per user, that's I guess one way to in a multi-instance to spin it up that way. It's probably about 5 years a little bit too late. Now that containers and clouds get that way, but it's another approach at doing it, and keeps the abstraction at a kind of process level.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned containers. I mean, everybody seems to be investigating running on containers, Kubernetes. That's the new, exciting thing for most people. So how much work are you, delving into there to try and tune and optimize?
I recently actually took over the MariaDB Docker library container. So I've been doing a lot of work there. I doing the sensible thing up front is like writing a test suite for that entry point. So I finished that this week. So that's all integrated into the GitHub Actions there, and going, yes, okay, good, got a starting point. Now I can feel a bit more comfortable actually ripping about parts and changing that to just preserve the compatibility. But as you look into things like that, it's the same sort of thing. You see that you're doing in this entry point a lot of workarounds for A, the Debian packaging, and B, the MySQL install DB script that is very ancient. And probably could actually use some more modern features that sort of map to how it's used in containers, but also just packaging scripts in general.
And so, like, when you talk about, like, those types of tools and, trying to update, some of those packages, I know MariaDB is very eager to work with the community on contributions. What sort of things are you looking for help with? How can people get involved?
We've got a GitHub account, and you can just send pull requests to there, and we'll work through and merge code. We get a lot of code actually contributed from distro maintainers, the NetBSDs, the FreeBSDs, just to add that little bit of extra portability to make them happy and get that working. There's things like what I've mentioned that are just improvements and things that can get going. There's can also, I guess, got a knowledge base where you can write documentation. We've got a Zulip channel on zulip.mariadb.org, where you can just like a Slack channel. It's a chat program where you can come in and talk to us about bugs, features, that kind of thing, or just SQL problems. Really, if you get us at the right time, we'll happily look through those and get a bit of insight into what you're doing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, changing gears just a little bit, at Percona Live this year, you gave a talk specifically on using MySQL dump or MariaDB dump in this case, as a way to migrate back and forth between MySQL and MariaDB. And we know that many people use Maria and MySQL interchangeably. And so I don't I don't want you to give your whole presentation, but that is recorded. It is available. And, maybe give us a little bit of an idea on why this topic, what was interesting about it. And, why have you seen people try to do this?
So I guess people have used the backups for ages, and the MySQL dump has outputted a table of like MySQL.users, and it's got these rows and columns of what constitutes the user data. But as we're seeing in the development of both MySQL and MariaDB, that these tables are actually changing quite common. So the aspect of dumping out of one version and importing into another version, especially if you're doing a partial import or an additive import, that's not actually mapping up to the table structure, and B, if users have actually gone through that and started to work out which column means what. I mean, that's just a bunch of hurt that that users don't deserve, really.
Yeah.
So there's like the SQL syntax like create user that sort of provides a portable way to create a user, strangely enough. Isn't that why SQL was made? Portability. So what I did with MySQL dump, and in the later versions of 10.4 plus, MariaDB dump is an alias, because having two things in the ecosystem the same name is just confusing enough, especially once they start to become different. So added those features. So we've got MySQL dump or MariaDB dump -- system equals all users stats, various aspects, all in that MySQL system database, and outputs in a portable form.
Okay, and that enables you to move it back and forth with ease.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the objective in outputting some of those was to write the SQL so it's portable, because there are some minor differences. And what MySQL and MariaDB have done for ages is they've had a executable comment syntax. So we've got in this version there, you're allowed this syntax in versions before it you aren't. So made extensive use of that to bridge the portability gaps between the two.
Cool. And let me leave you with this. I always like to ask people, what are they seeing? I like them to look into their crystal ball from their technologist perspective, if you will. What are you seeing coming down the pipeline technology wise that you're excited about? What are you starting to get interested in? Are there certain things that you're really looking forward to kind of deep diving into?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of maintenance, like more cores, more memory, and it's like how do you deal with that? But there's also, okay, we've got larger workloads that are growing beyond our IO speed, or beyond our memory capability, beyond the number of CPUs. So really interested in seeing how that transforms the code base and starts to take advantage of things such as what Postgres and MySQL have done, and starting to use multiple threads for a single SQL query to break them up and to do sorting, to divvy out the layers. As there are now more than 100 IOPS possible on disk. So running it in a single thread, we can do better. And things like NVMe, if they've got huge capabilities to do asynchronous IO on disk.
And I think the faster that technology gets, whether it's just disk IOPS or memory performance or larger memory footprints, or even quantum computing, which is around the corner. All of that drastically changes those restrictions that you started our discussion with, right? So those things where we say like, oh my God, how could you hard code something for 100 IOs a second? Or how could you put in this weird mutex? All those things, we're going to say those again in 5 years or 10 years, just because the technology has leapt so far, right? Because we're going to be like, why aren't you using this feature, this function, the capabilities of the system? Why are you handicapping yourself?
Yeah, and on other hardware features, I mean, Numa has been around for ages. Do we do anything specific about it? Not really. There's probably avenues to start to split that up, assisting that in the glibc development. This week or last week, there was version 4 of a Futex 2 system call that actually has Numa capability. So you can do locks, but I say I'm doing a lock, but I know it's only on these particular nodes, and yeah, that allows you to write much more scalable code up in that way.
All right. Well, Daniel, thank you for sitting down with me today, talking to me a little bit about what you're working on, where things are going, talking about some, of those crazy bugs. And if you haven't checked out the Percona live session, it should be available up on YouTube under the MariaDB community room. But Daniel, we appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Woohoo! Pleasure being with you all. Thank you very much.
All right. Wow, what a great episode that was. We really appreciate you coming and checking it out. We hope that you love open source as much as we do. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And of course, tune in to next week's episode. We really appreciate you coming and talking open source with us.